I'll finish this lecture by noting two developments of three developments that help to set the stage for a more systematic investigation. These really are the significant events between the time of Aristotle and the time of Descartes and Berkeley. The first is Euclid's axiomatic treatment of planar geometry. This treatment influences conceptions of both the mind and of mental functioning for centuries to come. Second, physiological theories of the nervous system and of mind-body interaction slowly start to emerge. Third, the increase in trade, wealth, and intellectual freedom of the Renaissance bring about the scientific revolution, which finally begins to increase the pace at which investigations into the nature of the mind occur. By organizing geometrical knowledge into an axiomatic system, Euclid creates a model for mathematics, but also for philosophy and science that's still influential today, and which often serves as a model for rational thought. Though it's not known for sure, even whether Euclid actually existed, there are some accounts that say that he trained in geometry in Athens at Plato's Academy. These are his 5 axioms, from which he derives all of geometry with a few definitions and a few postulates. We can think of one's knowledge as a rational belief corpus, and as such, we can see in Euclid a model for its organizational structure and genesis. One's knowledge would flow from arguments based upon premises, the truth of which one cannot doubt. Deductive reasoning transmits the certainty and truth of one's initial principles to all other beliefs. Euclid's work systematically and rigorously organizes geometrical knowledge in terms of undoubtable axioms from which all other truths are deduced by careful proof, and so it serves as a model for many scientists and philosophers from that point on. For instance, Thomas Hobbes, pictured here, speculates that by ratiocinatation, or thought, he means computation. Descartes models both his epistemology and his scientific methodology on Euclid, and Benedictus de Spinoza wrote his famous posthumously published work Ethics in an axiomatic format. The impact of Euclid consists in providing a paradigmatic instance of intellectual accomplishment, which can and does serve as an extremely influential conception of reason itself, and often of all mentality, as consisting in deductive operations on statements. That is, in terms of logical operations on truth-functional representations. That is, representations that can be true or false. One can't underestimate the impact of this conception of reason and mentality upon the theoretical musings of the intellectuals that follow Euclid through the centuries. Our second and last significant development to be covered in this lecture is the development of a more detailed anatomical and physiological knowledge of the human body. This occurs primarily during an odd window early on in the Hellenistic period of about 30 or 40 years, in which Herophilus and Erastus perform dissections and thereby rediscover some of that lost anatomical knowledge that had been present in ancient Egypt but absent until this point, and developed no further really until we get to Galen. Galen, who was a physician to gladiators and soldiers, did have occasion to indirectly observe the organs of the body. However, he was not known to have performed any dissections on human cadavers, only on animals, in much the same way that Aristotle had. And it's in his writings that we see one of the earliest references to the ventricle theory of mind-body interaction, the genesis of behavior by mentality. In fact, Galen argues against this view, which indicates that it must have existed for some time prior to his writing. But despite his objections in his work on the usefulness of the parts of the body, the theory that the ventricles are filled with a psychic noumena, an airy vaporous substance supposed to interact with both the body and the mind, rises to prominence as the preeminent view about the nature of the way in which the soul and the body interact. Galen argues against the idea, and against the idea that the movements of the pineal gland, which is a structure inside one of the ventricles, acts to regulate the flow of these pneumata within the ventricle. Yet his arguments fail to prevent ventricle theories of mind-body interaction from coming to dominate thinking about the nature of the mind throughout the Middle Ages.